Dr. Ghouddoussi received his bachelor's degree in physics from Sharif University of Technology in 1990. He then obtained his master's degree from the University of Alberta and his PhD degree in physics from Wayne State University in 2003. From 2003 to 2005, he was professor at Oakland University. Since 2005 until now, he is a research staff at Wayne State University, and his research interests are magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, and MRS. Aside from his education in physics, Dr. Ghouddoussi has had extensive studies in Islamic studies starting during his college years. He has taken many courses in Sharif University of Technology, University of Alberta, and Wayne State University in topics such as philosophy of science, Islamic philosophy, Western philosophy, Quranic studies, and history of Islam and Christianity, among others, in addition to his self-taught studies. He has been an active member and lecturer in Shia community in Detroit since 1998. Dr. Ghouddoussi, if you have presentation, you can share it now, and we are going to your lecture. Can you hear us? We cannot hear. We are waiting just some seconds for Dr. Ghouddoussi. I apologize for this inconvenience because of the internet problem. We have changed the plan and it was a bit problematic.
ببخشید من تصویرم
سلام علیکم دکتر قدوسی. سلام علیکم.
ببخشید شما تصویر منو دارید با تصویر اسلاید؟
بله بله تصویر شما رو داریم، تصویر اسلاید رو ولی نداریم.
صداتون تصویر من دارید؟
تصویر صدای شما هست ولی تصویر اسلاید رو نداریم.
من شیر اسکرین کردم. بذار ببینید تو یکیش که شاید من کمتر آشنا با خب دوبنی شیر رو زدم. شیر سیستم آیدیو ریتش ندارم ویندو شیر اینجا اسکرین
لینک شیر داره.
بله من کلیک کردم روش. بعد
اسکرین شما
اینتر اسکرین رو میخوام بزنم نمیره جلو. شاید یک بار کنسل کنم دوباره بشه کنسلش کردم. open share tray desktop English screen share screen. ببخشید من فکر میکنم حالا من خود پاورپوینت رو میکنم اشاره مشکلی نیست. اگر شد اون وقت بچه‌ها میتونم اسکرین کنم. الان میبینید؟
الان درست شد. بله
بله
الان داریم.
خیلی بله. خب من خیلی واسه بخوام از تأخیری که برنامه چیز شد من سعی کردم برسم. پس ان شاء الله هر وقت بفهمید شروع کنم. انگلیسی حرف بزنید.
بفهمید.
بسم الله الرحمن Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm very happy to be part of our this program, which was organized by Stifel for Islamic Study and then Al Mustafa Institute. I am the topic of the talk, as you see, is brief look at the contemporary scholarship used on the phrase wa-rahbaniyatan, ibtada'hua in Quran. Is a part of the verse 27 of chapter 57. Hadith, and what I'm saying scholarship is mostly Western scholarship, and contemporary maybe covers a little bit longer time. And I want to see what in the modern scholarship more or less they have seen the main ideas about this. And the image you see was the Saint Catherine Monastery, which is one of the most famous maybe monasteries is in Egypt, in Peninsula Sinai, is under foothills of Mount Sinai. You know, it's the continuous, oldest continuous inhabited monastery in the world. It's built before Islam, about 548, 565 before the birth of Prophet Muhammad, and has so it has its own interesting story because it's related to our topic, which is Rahbaniya is usually understood. Okay, monasticism. So the verse we are focusing is this one, and then I think it's good we look at it for a while, and then some features of it, and then we come back to it. I mean, maybe also it's good when I'm putting it, say the motivation. The motivation of this study is fewfold. First, show what Western scholarship is, and you see similarities and differences with the traditional view. I think more similar than different, because I think very often they also have engaged in this verse the same hermeneutical techniques, tactics, strategies which the classical commentators did if they want to extract some special information from the verse, or as we discussed it, more than translation, interpreting it, because this is among verses that have some features which really any translation is essentially an interpretation. That's one point. I think some of their views also will help us to understand the verse better. Maybe I tell you at the beginning or warn you, I think my talk was a little bit longer. If I want to do justice to it, is a little bit longer. So maybe I hope not too much longer. And then I think the traditional view has some ambiguities because of the type of hadiths or instances of revelation they added, and they try to understand it. And I think sometimes instead of being clarifying, it has made it a little bit more complicated or somehow historically dubious. Was it true or not? And I think with some at this stage, we can get a relatively clear meaning out of it. I believe after this study and see different views, actually we can interpret it better now, which matches with historical facts or known facts better. And then, so let's go look to the verse and then some features of it we have to go through. So the early part is, ثُمَّ قَفَيْنَا عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ بِرُسُلِنَا. Now, the previous verse is talking about some of the prophets God sent, and then it's after them there are some other prophets has been sent. So you have to look for the names, verse 26. Then verse 20, this part after then mentions that وَقَفَّيْنَا بِعِيسَى ابْنِ مَرْيَمَ وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْإِنْجِيلَ وَجَعَلْنَا فِي قُلُوبِ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُ رَأْفَةً وَرَحْمَةً. And then wa-rahbaniyatan ibtada'hua ma katabnaha alayhim illa ibtigha'a rizwanillah fama ra'uha haqqa ra'ayatiha fa'atayna allazina amanu minhum ajrahum wa kaseerun minhum fasiqun. Okay, the first thing is there is not much qira'ah differences here, or the qira'ah differences are not much important. It's regarding how to read Injil or Anjil or Ra'fatan or Ra'afatan or something like that. So those are actually the interesting part. We don't have much qira'ah thing. But the real part is exactly started with the phrase, the challenging part, wa-rahbaniyatan ibtada'hua. First, I have to say the translation and the way it is broken is the one Ali Ghali has done. It is the one most scholars, classical scholars and modern scholars do that. Essentially, Arbery has done that too. I have it the slides, but I don't think we need it to show it. And it's also matches mostly of Shia commentaries. Shia commentaries, which Jean McAuliffe has gone to an article, Quranic Christians have gone through many commentaries, including three Shia commentaries, Sheikh Ghoddoussi and Allama Tabatabai or and Kashani. Maybe Tabarsi or Sheikh Ghoddoussi, but all kind of is this. And the way which I'm going to say, all have done it like this. And then, so in this way, kind of the consensus has been this, but not in Western scholarship and not even in classical times. One interesting feature is that we don't have many, or essentially except one hadith in Shia tradition, which is directly related to this verse. So some quoting this verse and then say, okay, this is the meaning of it. This is meaning that. There's one. In Sunni tradition is more, and that has made many Shia mufassirs, the classical ones, even Allama Tabatabai, kind of go to them, use them. If so, the Shia one is some person asked the seventh Imam, and I think they're asking, and that's a little bit very concise too, because Imam only says two words, and then what that two word means is not that 100% clear. But it seems the person asks, what is our rahbaniyya among we Muslims or we Shias? And then Imam says Salatul Layl. So if you want to have to something extra doing Salatul Layl. So let's put this aside. Look, one of the challenges is the grammatical. Whether you connect this wa-rahbaniyya to the above phrase and make it an object of the verse ja'alna. So make it وَجَعَلْنَا فِي قُلُوبِ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُ رَأْفَةً وَرَحْمَةً وَرَهْبَانِيَّةً. This has been read like this. Look, I can show it to you. This is from Griffiths, and many Western scholars, the one we discussed today, are more inclined to hear. And there are very few classical scholars like that. So you see, they put it like this: we put in the hearts of those who follow him mercy, compassion, and monasticism. So putting in the heart of the people monasticism is associated to God. Then this comes, they innovated, invented it. So ibtada'hua. And then you have to now interpret ma katabnaha alayhi illa ibtigha'a rizwanillah. Now, if the way it is, we are reading it, it says, Ra'fatan wa rahmatan was placed in the heart by God. But rahbaniyatan wasn't a God institution. It wasn't placed or prescribed by God. They innovated it. And then the way is understand, ma katabna alayhim is a phrase in the middle of the talk, an exceptional phrase, see, but the dashed line has come. We have not prescribed for them. So the sentence could be have been like that: wa-rahbaniyatan ibtada'hua illa ibtigha'a rizwan Allah. The meaning is that they innovated rahbaniya. What exactly rahbaniya means, for now you understand it more. Monasticism, that's also the question, the main idea to talk. What is exactly that means? I mean, it seems it is clear, but a couple of the two recent scholarship of Western scholarships bring some other ideas. So you can understand rahbaniya going to seclusion, getting separate from the society, not necessarily living in monasteries or not necessarily going toward the celibacy. But for now, the two ideas are really understood, because that's the kind of common understanding from with the word. So rahbaniya ibtada'hua ma katabnaha alayhim illa ibtigha'a. So they did it for seeking pleasure of God. We didn't prescribe for them. But then they were not able to observe its due observance. They couldn't hold its boundary. That's the general meaning is. At least this interpretation, this understanding, which is the majority, Western, all Shia, and majority contemporary classical Sunni scholars. Because it's very harder to read and has some grammatical problem if you connect rahbaniya to the upper sentence and put it an object of the film. Ja'alna means we put in the hearts. It's make it harder. But if you keep it separate, then okay, you have to break these parts like that. Then the question is that, but if you do it this way, you understand there must have been a form of rahbaniya which was acceptable. That's what we have to know. If they have kept the due observance of it, God may be okay with it, because they have good intentions, and God didn't prescribe it explicitly, but they have good intention. But then they didn't keep the boundary. Okay, what was it they did? What they did which broke the boundary? I mean, nowadays, the question if celibacy is accepted or not. But nowadays, if putting it aside, I mean, with all the issues we hear about Catholic Church and some scandals, we can have some anticipation. Okay, what they did not keep and the boundary, maybe the things happen like child abuses and all those lawsuits. But was it the case similar at that time? What is and what is the offense they did? Was it ethical regarding sexual ethics or behavior, or something else, or was it financial? Many people understood it financial. But the interesting point is this: if you look to this verse, 29 ayah, 6 ayah before it have very strong and direct financial connotations. 7, 10, 11, 18, 20, 24, all are talking give loan to God, spend for the sake of God, don't be stingy. So this can and maybe really people have said, and kind of that's what maybe I'm okay. So but for now everybody understood, and more or less everybody understood, the offense, the one who break the boundary, was moral, more ethical, personal, sexual ethics, and something like that. Something in that line, everybody's understood. So these are, and then there is also a question. فَأَعْطَيْنَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْهُمْ أَجْرَهُمْ وَكَثِيرٌ مِنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. This al-lazina goes to whom? All the followers of Jesus, those who follow Jesus, al-lazina tabahu, or goes to the ones ibtada'hua rahbaniyya. Because if al-lazina tabahu means the Christians general, rahbaniyya ibtada'hua is the one who innovated or go to monasticism, kind of this kind of life. But most people, I think, understood it general, and then again, and then so so all these are the features can be here and can be discussed. So, and again, maybe there are many other points. Maybe I go it on the way of going forward. So to see what are the other features. As I said, Griffiths, he's a very known scholars of Christianity, in Muslim and Arab world, in Washington, D.C. Catholic University. So this is one reading which, as I said, Western scholars and some classical ones prefer. And in this reading, monasticism is understood to be something initially instituted by God. This they like it because subsequently, who Jesus followers or somebody else reinvented it and introduced innovations in it. And although, as I said, this reading has a very grammatical problematic ones, and as Sidney Griffith says, most Muslim interpreters and many modern ones had understood it the way I wrote it, or translated monasticism they invented only to seek pleas of God. We did not prescribe it for them. So this sentences in translation is shifted. So in Arabic, we did not prescribe it for them, was between monasticism they invented only to seek pleas of God. And they did not exercise a proper compliance. And this reading, monasticism is understood to be human innovation totally, not something mandated by God. Most interpreters favor some form of the second reading, regarding the first one to be the product of faulty grammatical construction. The first one is the one, as I said, the previous page. Nevertheless, some earlier Muslim exegetes and some other scholars have in fact entertained the theoretical possibility of some form of the first reading. There are some hybrid readings too. Hybrid readings too. This is the translator of the Ihsan Islahi tafsir, but this is contradictory to what Ihsan Islahi has interpreted the verse. So I think the translator got it from somewhere else, and then without being careful, okay, what is the content of the commentary is. So look, this is a new hybrid. It goes partly with the second one. So it says, and as far as monasticism, they invented themselves. So it doesn't connect it to Ja'alna. So it says, and put compassion and mercy in the hearts of followers.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Your screen is stopped. We just have the first slide.
Oh, I wish you had said it from the beginning. I only have the first slide.
We have just written in chat, and I'm sorry to interrupting, but I must just say it.
Okay. Because because much of it is my slides. So because I didn't look at the chats, while I'm discussing. Yeah, I was thinking I have this problem with Zoom too. Let me see. I can share the screen differently, or maybe I have to go to the other one.
It's okay now. It's okay now. Now we can see the second. It's okay now.
It's okay now, but I think no, you see it. So what do I see it? That's the problem. Let's see. No, because all the talk has been dependent on that. Okay, so let me see. Do you see now the first one? Or maybe I don't. Okay, now you see the second, yeah?
And now the second, yes.
Okay, I noticed I shouldn't full screen it. And then when I go to PowerPoint, I have this problem. So, okay, I try to, the slides are big. So I need to go back, maybe not all the pictures, not the explanation, but also this verse. I hope you guys maybe have looked at it, because that's much of the story was here. Again, the question we had is rahbaniyya. Rahbaniyya should be connected with rafatan wa rahmatan, or not. One interpretation, which minority, and then what is then we have, when we do that, what is exactly transgression they did, and so on. Okay, and then we were looking to the Griffiths one interpretation, the second interpretation, which is the one like I had in the translation, and the third one. Look, as I said, there are some hybrid versions. For example, you will see it says here, we say put compassion and mercy in the hearts of the followers. So compassion and mercy, it put the hearts of Jesus followers by God. But monasticism is separate, and as monasticism, they invented it themselves. We had only enjoined on them to seek pleas of God. So, but they did not faithfully observe its bounds. So the person who read this has come like this. Read, and I'm still, it's the question, what is this is the more sound, the grammatical one. It says, "Ma katabnahu alayhim illa ibtigha rizwan Allah." So instead of taking this ما كتبناه عليهم, and this exceptional sentence in the middle, you read it as full one sentence. wa-rahbaniyatan ibtada'hua ما كتبناه عليه إلا ابتغاء رضوان الله. A general principle is we haven't prescribed anything except seeking God's pleasure. And then with this reading, the other combinations can come through. So this is a hybrid. I'm not going to the hybrids, but I want to show you. Okay, there are some other possibilities too, but we have only mainly two camps. Okay, so what I want to do is what Western scholars have done, and then what the intention was. So what I used for the early review is this article by Sarah Severi, which is it published in 1990, Analysis Tradition Concerning the Origin and Evaluation of Christian Monasticism. So we start with Louis Massignon. Louis Massignon is a very famous French Catholic scholar. And what is unique about him? First, Massignon goes with the one brief is called first reading. That is the one, put monasticism as an object of Ja'alna, that is ascribed to God, has placed monasticism in the heart of follower of Jesus. And then it goes to do some general conclusion, which was the frame many of the Western scholars in the early 20th century was working on it. So this verse was unanimously interpreted in a permissive and laudatory sense by commentators of the first 2 centuries. So he claims all the first 3 century commentators were looking very positively to the institution of monasticism. Whereas later commentators, which, okay, very famous ones are latter ones, influenced by anti-monastic or anti-ascetic tendencies, introduced into the commentaries of this verse the spirit of reservation and interdiction. So, because the way the translation we read, there are definitely reservations, and then they haven't kept the boundary and so on. And then Massignon says, and this has been done by putting the verse in the frame of hadiths, which according to him, Sunni hadiths, these are more later made hadiths. So, and then one of them is that very famous one, wa-rahbaniyatan fil Islam, there is no monasticism in Islam, or in either version, inna rahbaniyata ummati al-jahad, the monasticism of my community is the holy one. Okay, this still could be questioned. For example, that regarding the second one is really, this is a true hadith from Prophet Muhammad. And there are 2 things, whether these hadiths are true or not, especially the second one, truly hadith from Prophet Muhammad, maybe this version is distorted or later made version, or the claim Massignon makes, because it's not necessarily the negative opinion regarding monasticism from among Muslims should be as a result of these hadiths. Besides him, there is another scholar, German scholar, this wrote in German, Edmund Becks, a German scholar, which also do something similarly, and then attempts to demonstrate, relying solely on Quranic commentary without to resort external material, that Prophet Muhammad is Medina's period revered Christian monasticism as a noble religious ideal, stemming from devout piety, while at the same time regarded as incongruent man's physical spiritual weakness and therefore not prescribed by divine decree. So Beck has a more middle view, which is more closer to Islamic view. I mean, you have to have in mind that Prophet himself, before prophethood, was practicing a kind of monasticism, not celibacy, let's put aside, but seclusion, going to the bar of Hara, all this must be in the background when discussing this. And therefore being there for days and weeks, and sometimes take Imam Ali alayhi salam with him, and just going away from the society and focusing and so on. And the Bar Hara is interesting. At the end of it is an opening small hole, really is like zoomed on the Kaaba. So it's kind of any prayer you do is directly channeled to the Kaaba. So, and then there is another famous, very prominent scholar, Tor Andre, which even he thinks that celibacy was not excluded by Prophet Muhammad even. That means Tor Andre goes, Prophet Muhammad even approved celibacy as part of monasticism. So you see a spectrum that all are favor of monasticism, and then your Torah under even accept celibacy. Maybe Massinion is a little bit silent about it, and Beck more closer to the Islamic view. And then again, all of them use the same hermeneutical strategy, that taking that rahbaniya to rahbaniyatan as object of the verb ja'alna. So in this book, in the verse, to reconcile the tone of reproach implied in the verse by the term ibtada'hua, they kind of play with it. So we don't need to go through that. And then they use some other verses of Quran which is relatively positive to the monks, verse 82, 83, which maybe we see later on, to kind of prove or justify this positive view respect to monasticism. They say Quran is positive, Muslims are interpreting it more negatively than they should. So as I said, in keeping with this attitude, both scholars construe this verse as displaying in syntactical predicate object relationship between ja'alna fi qulubihim, we set in their hearts, and rahbaniyatan monasticism. This is, they interpret rahbaniyatan as syntactically conjoined to ra'fa and rahma as a third object to the verb ja'alna. So these are the strategies they use, which is not very different from strategies classical commentators use in their context. Now, but this view was rejected by Paul Nevia in his book, Exegesis Quranic and Language Mistake. Because I want to go faster, he comes saying, no, you're at least rejecting Massinian view, that this attitude of Muslims is the later construct of after 3rd century, 4th century. He says, no, look, you got the earliest commentaries we have, which is from Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, which is the middle of the 2nd century, is really negative, critical. And actually, Muqatil, as what we did, has used a second approach and completely separate rahbaniyatan from ja'alna, and then and syntactically connected to ibtada'hua. I emphasize, you have two. Maybe going back here, either for those like Massinion, Beck, or Tar, Andre, you connect rahbaniyatan to rahmatan, and so you connect it to ja'alna. Or like this translation, you separate it from ja'alna, but connect it to the ibtada'hua. So this is the strategy to the end till today people are following. So Pahlavi has said, look to Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, you find clearly shows that Muqatil is critical, and that's a tafsir. This is the earliest one we have. For example, Sarah Severi says this somewhat formalistic insisted about syntactical distinction is obviously crucial to semantics of the question and discussion. It kind of explained why each side have different strategy, because if there lies a deep emotive conceptual gap between the idea portrayed by the verb ja'alna of monasticism having been granted to the followers of Jesus by God's grace, and the idea conveyed by the verb ibtada'hua of monasticism have been created and institutionalized by followers themselves. But if you go to Muqatil Sulaiman, it's clear that it's the other way. It's critical, and I don't go to get to the detail, and then explaining exactly as we have our translation. So the translation we have, which Mr. Ali already had, is not a new translation, or new interpretation. Is the translation interpretation which Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, which is the oldest complete tafsir we have, Sunni tafsir we have, is also used. And then and explicitly called that middle sentence is stan al-kalam. This does clearly introducing a new sentence. So it says rahbaniyatu is syntactically connected to ibtada'hua, and that middle sentence is exception, and then the speech is continued. Actually, Nevia, which in his discussion not only finds something from Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, but not relying just on the direct interpretation or commentary of Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, but also looks to his commentary to the other verse, which is somehow related to, again, you see the Surah Al-Ma'idah, the verses 82 onward is talking about Christians, about rahbans, about monks, and about that some of Christians are, when they hear the Quran or the word of God, they're very affected, and they sometimes their tears is in their eyes. And then in commentary on that, which is clearly related to the issue of Rahman, is emphasizes on this verse, which is 587, and it says, "O believers, forbid not such good things as God has permitted you." So kind of, if you connect it with the idea of Rahbaniya, and then this means they have gone transgress and maybe have forbidden something on themselves, which God has permitted them, which usually understood marriage and marriage life, and is a criticism of celibacy. But then Sulaiman mentions an hadith, which the version he has is really is expanded, is as Sivri says, is muddled. Everybody is present, from Imam Ali, Umar, Ibn Masud, Abu Zar. Everybody is added to Usman ibn Mas'ud. So he's a really embellished and storified version in Mu'atalib Sulaiman. And that's his tafsir commentary as a problem. He's mixing stuff and sometimes changing, distorting stuff. But the same hadith in Shia tradition is there too. And then if you accept Shia tradition is early, I mean, except you want to doubt everything, which is early, then again, you see the negative attitude is clearly there. And then negative attitude with Rahbaniyya. This is a famous, this is Kafi, and then the wife of Usman ibn Mas'ud, a companion of the Prophet, come to the Prophet, says, look, Usman is not doing anything, just fasting and praying, and Yasum al-Nahar wa Yahum al-Layl, and standing all night. So doing, as we accept maybe Manas is doing Salatul Layl, but maybe going excessive in it. And then Prophet, when he heard this, got angry. He rushed to his house, and when he entered his house, noticed this Osman is now praying still, and doing another prayer, Mustahab prayer. And when he saw the Prophet stop prayer, and the Prophet told him, look, God hasn't sent me for Rahbaniyya. لم يرسلني الله تعالى بالرحبانية لكن بعثني بالحنيفية والسهلة السمحة الصومة وأصلة ومس أهلي. So he says, it sent me by Din Hanif, ease, tolerance. So pray and fast, but also keep the family duties. And if you like the religion, fitrati, the religion I brought or initiated, so you have to follow my tradition. And my tradition includes marriage and all its responsibilities coming with it. So this is, again, an argument Naviya used, the same hadith in Shia tradition against Messenian view. Sarab Sivri himself's comment that, look, you may have some discussions whether any of these examples is really hard evidence that attitude determine what is the attitude of Prophet Muhammad himself was regarding monasticism, and then what was understood by monasticism is not first clear. But at least it's clear that this anti-monastic views are very are prevalent and current at those times. So it's not as a result of made up hadiths later, as Messenian says. And then again, she hints to some hadiths which are, again, for example, إن الله لم يبعثني بربانية إن إني لم أمر بالرهبانية. I have an order بالرهبانية. So overall is the criticism of Rahbaniyya is understood overall and is common, and even his hadiths are made of you think, but it reflects its sentiment, which is a sentiment which is early, not as late as Messenian says. And then this Sivri, in follow-up, Naviya, he herself says, in supporting the position of Naviya, criticizing Messenian, she finds two other examples, which one of them is very interesting, is a Shia poet, very famous Zaydi Shia poet, Qanat, because this is, again, we are lucky have his diwan, his collection of shares, poems. He died early, 126, so he died before Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, even before the collapse of, Abbasid revolution, so collapse of Umayyads. And then clearly you see, if you see these two verses, he says, it is blameworthy for people of religion if it has been established to drift into innovations and not to shun them. So clearly has the sense of translation. We have Rahbaniya as innovation. Similarly, the monks invented what was not prescribed by scripture, nor revealed by inspiration from God. So exactly is the second interpretation, understanding, which is kind of criticized that. And then he says clearly the verse is looking to Quran as a paraphrasing it. So everybody listen to the Arabic version of this verse by Kumayt will clearly remember the verse we are discussing. Then also gives an example from another, this time a Sunni scholar, again another Sunni scholar, Abdullah al-Mubarak, is earlier, contemporary to many, earlier than many hadith writers. For example, Ibn Hanbal died at 240. So he died, Mubarak died 60 years earlier, wrote one of the early books on Zuhd. So that's interesting. This guy essentially is not against asceticism. But then he has this hadith, every community has its monasticism. The monasticism, my community is the holy war for the sake of God. Whether this is true or not, it could be a question. This emphasize on jihad of holy war. Sometimes this is a truncated version of a hadith which give you different instances of monasticism, doing prayer, fasting, all those stuff, and only stick to this one, and is not also understood of the jihad as striving for the sake of God, because that could be general. I think this would match, this distortion of the matches with the policy of the government, which really wanted people go to the frontier to fight, kind of the same motivation. Took hayyala khayran amal out of azan and put as-salatu khayran min an-nawm. But the second caliph maybe had been working, because the emphasis of fighting the frontier with Byzantines was Awad has financial incentive for the government. The soldiers will also occupy, bring revenue, and so on. So it could be not a true hadith, but still this guy, Abdullah Mubarak, passed by 181. So this must be very early, no matter what. Okay, so this is one line, and we can go faster. Okay, we don't have time to go to the Shia commentaries, Sunni commentaries, the hadiths to use. Really, Jean McAuliffe has done a fantastic job over there in the chapter in his book, Fair and thoroughly discussed. But we cannot sense much of the discussion after and maybe some of the tendencies of Western scholars, if we don't have at least see one of them. And then you would see, which there are few or listed, some are very long. One is huge, very long with detail from Ibn Abbas, allegedly from Ibn Abbas. But this one from Tabari is short, you have a sense of it. And actually, I think has some grains of truth is. So maybe more than that. Look, so Tabari says, one other thing is the Sunni scholarship, when they're discussing this verse, is not always just discussing monasticism and who invented monasticism, but also they're discussing the whole Christianity and the whole deviation of the Christianity from its true Christianity. Because now we believe the Gospels have been corrupted, this Trinity or divinity of Jesus was added. So, I mean, you can call, they consider Christianity, maybe, for example, Paulinity, is what is innovation of Paul. So very often this discussion in this verse, that ibtada'hua, instead of being limited to rahbaniyatan, goes to all Christianity, and then is mixes together, because of the early part is follower of Jesus, and then the latter part also, it seems, edge goes to all. So this produced some confusion and some inaccuracy, and I think some, again, historical unreliability, some of those. But look what Tabari says. I think it still is a good one. The source of this tradition is the commentary of Muhammad ibn Sa'd, but it's stated that during the period intervening between Jesus and Prophet Muhammad, which is the Duratul Fitratul Rasul, believers who were outnumbered and defeated by the polytheists. So we have true Christians, and then a majority which were polytheists. Now, because this polytheists, we have to understand, is the Roman actual real polytheists, or the Christians, like Paul, followers of Paul, who believe in Trinity. For now, we have to accept, it seems, is the Roman polities, real polities. Withdrew to the caves, so they escaped to the caves to be saved, like the Ashab al-Kahf. They remained in this situation until some of them become infidels. This could be the issue of maybe, kafarta, maybe going away out of Christianity, going back to Roman polytheism, or embrace innovation, maybe become followers of Paul, and Christianity, or the version of Christianity is now dominant, or Paul, or Trinity, and so on. And Christianity and Judaism, and then Christian and either they embrace innovation, Christianity, and Judaism. So kind of this says both of them kind of are innovation. The whole Christianity and Judaism, the versions are there, or maybe we have three things: innovation, Christianity, and Judaism. And then this Christianity is I read it wrong. Let me say, and embrace innovation, Christianity, and Judaism. So the way it says, these people who are these people who stay in the caves either become infidel, go back to Roman polities, or accept Christianity, which is dominant majority Christianity, which as expressed by Paul letters, or become Jews, or follow this innovation. And we guess this innovation means they continue to do some kind of monastic life, than the fathers. And then others held to Deen Isa. There are a few minorities stick to the true religion of Jesus until the time of the Prophet Muhammad. So, and then is a little bit unclear. So, for example, the monk Prophet Muhammad Bohira, which allegedly Prophet Muhammad saw, should be among these true followers of Jesus, but whether the monastic life he did was that innovation, or it was a good monastic life, and then we have a version of monastic life which was not good and transgressing the boundaries, which kind of it must be understood like that. And then you can see this kind of hadith, or the way Tabari has put it, answers some questions and categorize the story like that. There were persecution of true believers by polities. The believers go underground. Apostasy of some believers in three directions: monasticism, Christianity, Judaism. Small group remains underground, faithful to the religion of Prophet Muhammad. To go further, I really kind of now starting maybe the main idea of the one I really want to get to. I hope to finish it soon. I will finish it sooner. Look, this kind of is a discussion, and by the criticism, people like Sarah Sivri or Paul Navia did it. Kind of that idea of Massigno went away, and then there wasn't much new discussion regarding this issue. And then until recently, Holger Zalantine, this German scholar, which has done very fine works in really this area of Quran and legal culture of Quran, similarity and differences with Judaism, Christianity, is trying to say a new thing. But the difference is this: now is not what Rahbaniya was, how it come, what part of Rahbaniya was good, wasn't innovative. Is really he wants to give a new interpretation to Rahbaniya. And then following him, Imran al-Badawi in Houston, Texas, also wrote an article. I think these are the two people. But I think Imran Badawi essentially accepted what the results or claim of Holger Zalantine and build on it. So I kind of limited the discussion to Holger Zalantine. He has done the discussion, Holger Zalantine, the discussion limited to two levels. One is the Quran's legal culture, his book as epilogue, as a chapter discussing it more summary. And then he has an article which it's Ahbar and Ruhban, religious leaders of the Quran in dialogue with Christian and rabbinic literature. So I have to go faster. Look, his work is very interesting, very good results for interesting results, really for traditional Muslims, everybody clarifying things. It's very, you have to look, for example, it says, I really want to read this paragraph, maybe not completely related to our discussion, but you can understand how Holger Zolentine works. So look, I would suggest a reading strategy for the Quran that may be applicable to many instances in which the text simultaneously relates to contemporaneous Jewish and Christian traditions. Yes, sometimes Quran criticized Jews and Christians simultaneously, as we kind of we see. And he says in his book, said, as he shown earlier, that very often when Quran talking about people of the book is combining both and is doing a twofold combining critique of both rabbis or the Jewish representatives and Christianity. And then in doing that, sometimes Quran allude to some sentences or mention sentences. You believe that, you do that. At the first instance, at least many Western scholars interpreted, Quran misunderstood it, or what is Quran says is not what the Jewish rabbis or Jewish followers believe, or the Christian followers believe. So he says, initially the Quran apparent divergence from rabbinic Christian teachings may be perceived as vague polemics, as indicative of a lack of precise familiarity with these traditions. For example, somebody criticizes, doesn't know what's distinction with the Shia and Sunni, or say something that. But this is important. Closer consideration, however, allows us to see that the Quran's simultaneous dialogue with rabbinic literature displays the same precision we saw with the Quran emphasis, the oral tradition encapsulated by the Didascalia. I will explain that. So it says, I will say to the truth that Quran intentional distortion of rabbinic tradition generates a polemical message for those who can tell the difference. Look, it doesn't say literally. For example, when it says why you Jews worship your rabbis or take your rabbis as God, which when you see the verse, okay, they will say, oh, we don't worship our rabbis. Who says we worship our rabbis? We only worship Yahweh. But then essentially Quran is kind of sarcastic. Say, look, the way you treat these rabbis and whatever they say, you accept them without any criticism, judgment, is like that. And we have in the Shia these two. When they ask about the verse 931, verse 31, Surah which these Jews do not worship their rabbis. So why Quran said that? Imam explained the way unconditionally accept and follow and do whatever these rabbis said, which some of them may be corrupt, which actually Quran around there applies the financial charge against them. So you see, this is the strategy he used. What is his book? His work is he used a book called or referred to a book called Didascalia Apostolorum, and another one, Clementine Homilies. Didascalia Apostolorum is a Christian legal treatise which belonged to the general church order. But it's interesting, is more close to the milieu and the time Quran is there. Some of the descriptions which Quran makes from the Christians in its time matches more with that, because the present Christians, especially Christians in the West, are different. So we cannot go through that. This book is old, but it's not earlier than 3rd century. A complete text, the oldest we know is 5th century in Latin, and the Syriac is 8th century. And Clementine Homilies is like that. I'm not going through all this because we don't have time. But what he wants to do is this. The purpose of his that article essay is to consider religious leaders named in the Quran, first in the context of Quran itself, and then the light of rabbinic, the Syriac Christian, and Judeo-Christian legal culture. So, look, interesting Quran is this. We'll see some of the verses. Consider two group of leaders or scholars for the Jews and two for Christians. And this clearly can be defined by Quran. The Jewish one are called Rabbaniyun, the one we call rabbis. The other one is Ahbar, which is not as clear. And many translators, at least it wasn't clear. And then Holger Zolentine has done a fine job to clarify this more. By looking to the other textbook like the Didascalia, which after the Bible, how they used it, who they refer it, what is the common root? Is there a common root with Syriac or Aramaic or other one? It's usually translated from scribes by the translators using the terminology which we have New Testament, Old Testament, especially Temple, so on. And then the one we have the Christians, which are Qissisin wa-rahbaniyatan. And Qissisin is translated priest. But this is a very interesting word. Look, this is the same in Syriac as the Shishin, and that's the root of the word Kishish in Farsi. Most probably, I didn't search some. I'm pretty sure that fine scholars can hear. I don't know Syriac, and I'm not doing English, but this word must have been absorbed in Farsi and Aramaic even before Islam. So most probably because there were Christian priests in Iranian land, the Eastern Church. So Qassisin, Qashishin, or something like that. Qashish is Kashish in Farsi. So that is no thing. And that's the one usually has the authority from the church hierarchy to do the religious ceremony. You know, the whole Eucharist and other ones, you know, the priesthood. Before Protestants, there was some priests are intermediary between, somehow some function between humans and God and so on. But then we have the Ruhbanan, which is from Rahaba, fear, and usually is understood monks. This is the word which is related to our discussion because the institution called Rahbaniya, the monks are called Ruhban, and then it seems Holger Zellentin wants to give a new definition of this. I'm sorry, I'll finish it hopefully by 15 minutes. I hope I can faster. So the point is this. What is the Zellentin main hypothesis is, I will argue that the term Rahbaniya, first attesting the Quran, is describing the office of the Rahban, cannot in the context designate monasticism or celibacy, as it is not often understood. Rather, the Ahbar and Rahban represent the overseers of the communities, regardless of their marital status. So he's kind of claiming Ahbar or Rahban is bishops. I'm not saying I agree with. Okay, the Quran's Rahban in many ways seem compatible to Christian leaders as they are known, for example, from the Scalia, whereas they're designated as bishops in the text. They must be married men, must be instead in a very local hierarchy with their own communities. But one of the things is that priests nowadays are celibate, but wasn't the case before. And even it's not in the Protestant churches. So what is he saying is this. It's like a context of Shii context, more you can say. But people looking to the clerical establishment usually say Rohaniyun and Maraji. So you recognize two groups, usually, especially your cleric or somebody where like Ayatollah Khomeini was writing a letter. Usually there is a common cleric which have many ranks. You know, if you know Ayatollah, Hujjatul Islam, Sekatul Islam, all those ranks are there. But usually they're called clerics or alim, or nowadays Rohani. But then you call Maraja, which are those grand Ayatollahs, because we have different functions. At least used to be. They are the hierarchy, the head, and all the institutions, monies go to them, homes, and they decided. So he wants to say the Sisin wa Rahbanan is the Sisin is like lower ranking clergy, and Rahbanan, contrary to the monks, is like a Maraja, the upper echelon leadership of the church, which is bishops. So then it says this criticism of this verse would not be monasticism, would go the whole church hierarchy. And then, but the other side, if you go the first strategy and then you claim that God has monasticism in the heart of people, you essentially say, okay, the church establishment was established by God, the whole hierarchy, the whole institution, and then was distorted. I'm not sure this is motivation. He doesn't say it, but it can be the motivation showing that. And then he makes it parallel to Rabbaniyun and Ahbar because he claims Ahbar is a higher level of Rabbaniyun. So again, Ahbar are the more knowledgeable one. It could be the Gospels, a little bit scribes were associated more with the temple, and rabbis with all villages, cities like the city of Jesus. But those scholars of temple has unique situation. Scribes were mostly there. But I'm not discussing Rabbaniyun and Ahbar, and he has done a fine job, but I'm not sure it's 100% done. But the Sisin and Rahbana, I disagree. And I think it's good. He's very strong in it, and I would disagree with it, and then we will see through. First, we have to remember, and if I find time, I show it more. These two categories of people exist, and they were very different. Let me give his arguments fast, and then maybe I go my criticism fast and hopefully finish it. So this is his main idea. But to see that, let's see the verses of Quran. Look, there are verses that Quran mentions Ahbar and Rahban. Ahbar is Jewish, Rahban is the Christian one, but accuse people of worshiping them. So one from the Jews, one from the Christian. So this makes sense to they be hierarchy. I agree, because in the sense, because it doesn't say rabbaniyun and it doesn't say qasisin. It doesn't say you people rabbaniyun wa qasisin arbaban min dunillah. So when you take some of those clergy as God, they should be the top of hierarchy usually. I mean, at least the upper echelon. So this maybe supports his view. Then he talks about ya ayyuhallazina amanu in kaseeran min al-ahbar wa-rahban liyakuluna amwal nas bil-batil. So three verses later, these two groups are accused embezzling, wasting, eating up people's money. So they must be in the position of power and collection and controlling money. So maybe the same question people have about homes or so on. Technically, ordinary clergy have no control of homes. They should say to marja. So again, this, you see, again, a dual criticism, simultaneous criticism, Jews and Christian, one Jew, ahbar from Jewish, the blue Jewish, rahban from Christians. And then you see this verse below, but again, this is the kind of verse that Wav was very important, because Muawiyah wants to read it that this is related to those ahbar and rohban, which hoarding gold and silver. But Abu Zar stood, no, this is general, this is separated from before. But you see, the financial corruption is there. The other verse, which is, this verse is important, maybe I should put it later, which is go against Salantin, Professor Salantin. He mentioned it, but he doesn't work on it. He just mentioned it, reference it. He doesn't go to the conclusions of it. This verse, God explicitly says, Savame by salawatun wa masjid. So so Savame is understood monasteries, by understood churches, and then synagogues and mosques. So Quran clearly distinguishes between the two buildings, the two institutions of church and monasteries. His interpretation put bishops, Ghasisin and Rohban, under church, because he says these bishops, the hierarchy of the church, okay, maybe celibate or not, but they're separate. But look, these two buildings, these two institutions are visibly, physically different. You can see them. They were from ancient times. We can see them. They're very, even nowadays, they're different. Monasteries are different from the churches, and they're closed and so on. So when Quran says Savame is completely familiar, is referring to that institution. And let me, one of my criticism right now say, look, even nowadays, I should have the criticism later on, but maybe I say it now before you guys. But look, even nowadays, maybe I keep it. I'm sorry, because let me go because I don't want to totally distort the logic. And then, but the point he has with the verses which clearly shows the scene, Ar-Rahman and Christians, are this verse 82 of Surah Ma'idah. So these are the two leaders of Christians, because we have Rohban and Ahbar. Some people say, okay, how you know this one is Christian, one is Jew, and so on. So so you clearly see Ghasasi and Rohban is used in the context of Christianity in the verse 82 Surah Al-Ma'idah. And then you have another verse used Rabbaniyun and Ahbar in verse 44 Al-Ma'idah, again together, the context of the Jews. So clearly that categorization of hierarchical leadership is correct. And then again, we have another time Rahbaniyun and Ahbar. So twice we have Rahbaniyun and Ahbar together in the context of Jewish. So these are the two Jewish leadership. And then we have Ghassasin and Rahbana is the two clerical or religious establishment leadership of Christians. Okay, this, as I said, Imran al-Badawi kind of used this and run to the bank, has semi-revisionist, I think a little bit grandiose claims. I'm not going to discuss it, but I don't think we even Holger is true. These claims are not necessarily standing over there, but you can see what he mean. I mean, I didn't go through what it says, but he says, look, the development of Rahbaniya informs our knowledge of the early Muslim community evolution into imperial power around the time of Caliphate al-Malik. But you can see what kind of conclusion he gets if we interpret Rahbaniya as a church hierarchy with the bishops and all together. According to his reading, the text favors the early. Then, according to my reading, this verse means. If you're accepting Holger Zelentin's conclusion, Rahbaniyat doesn't refer to monasticism, refers to bishops. And the combination of bishops and priests and lower rankers is referring to the whole church establishment. Then he says the text favors the early church that Jesus' disciples, especially Peter, established in Jerusalem. So this is the understanding, what Quran is criticizing, because it preserved its practices of circumcision under Jewish law. So it says Quran criticism is regarding the Jewish Christians or the Christian Jews, Christians which follow the Jewish Mosaic law and not. So that's the new interpretation, which I know many people will like it because it's more general. Once Paul did away with the requirements of circumcision for Gentile converts, the church went astray. From a Quranic perspective, the ensuing Hellenization of the Jewish or of a Jewish Christian church in Jerusalem took place between the time of Council in 50 Common Era and the relocation in Jerusalem Patriarchy to Constantinople 135. I know many people will like this, but I still think it is not true. So I hope I really finish soon. Okay, now let's go. I'm not going to look. What is Helger doing is try to go to the root first, but we have challenges. You know, the biggest challenge we have, if even the case of Keshish or Kasisin, or the Syriac is cognate with Arabic. In the case of Rohban, it is not. Rohban coming from Rahaba, fear, stuff like that. In Syriac and many of those languages, the word which is used for bishops is a word with root with ra'aya, which is connected with shepherd, which Keshish or Qasis is related to elder, which like we have presbyter. We have some churches, Protestant churches in the U.S. too, but bishop is not related to any way to Rohban. And you know what he's doing is like this, kind of his strategy is like this. Now in Iran, people call the ulama, the cleric people, Rohani. Used to be called alim or something else, or akhun or something like that. Now, Rohani, if you take it literal, means spiritual. And Rohaniyat, the institution, means spirituality. So but you know, when people talk about, usually do not mean this guy is really Rohani, is really spiritual. If they wanted to emphasize this is really spiritual too, they use other word ma'navi or something like that. So his argument is that ahbar, Rohban is like that. They call the bishops Rohban, but is a name stick to them because they should fear God and people should fear them. That's kind of his thing. But you know, in many levels, his argument is hand waving. He himself says there is no doubt and no way to dispute that term Rohban denotes monks. And much of his roots analysis, I think, is hand waving. I don't have time to go through that, but I can argue a little bit differently, and I give you. So we have a theory. Rohban is the same meaning we have monks, and then we know Quran by referring to Soma is aware of it. This is a big institution. It is a natural question some Sahaba have because prophets perform some form of monasticism, seclusion, fasting. Something like that is natural God unto address it. So all those stuff is there. And I'm saying, look, maybe I don't go to maybe some of the arguments of Holger Zelentin because you can read it, but I go to the criticism. You know, one of the criticism which I wanted to say, and then I said, is this. Look, the fact that the Scalia, which is a Christian book, have a good detailed separation of the Sisim and Rohban is because it is their knowledge of, that is, they distinguish between bishops and priests, and then there is a discussion how the bishops should see it, how the priests should see it, so two groups, because they have the good knowledge of the Christian structure. For example, the Shi'i maybe know very well about Marja and other Rohaniyuns, but a non-Shi'i usually doesn't know. For them, all of them are Shi'i clerics. I mean, so this separation is not as clear for a non-Shia or unimportant. They're the same. Even nowadays, if you find among Shias which are not very religious or not following stuff like that. And then, interestingly, in Shia community, I think if somebody from outsider observer come from Mars coming and observing the whole Shia practice, we now see two groups which have very important functionality on all Shia practices. One is the clergy, but the other one are madahs. The one who do eulogy, does poetry.
So if you really want to refer, and the madras are become much more influential, much more powerful, social, especially the last 40 years. So if you want to refer to members of the Shia community right now, you're not doing justice if you call them Rohaniyun and Maraja. Maybe ideally you don't want to call them madras, but the ones have more influence, and common people see them and interact with them. Madras, which are not clerics, do not wear the turban, and then the clerics, and then much of the ceremonies, actually these are the one coming the last and now pay the more. So I'm saying, for a common person at 6th and 7th century Arabs or non-Christians looking to the Christian institution, you see two people, clearly there's two people, two buildings, two institutions, which are, one is the priest, the CC, and one for the monks. Now, okay, this is one of my important criticism of him. And then the other thing, his strength, or many strengths, which I haven't gone all of it, but I think I said over all of it. I think his root words doesn't work. He's really hand waving. He has now to, because the bishop is called Ra'aya from Ra'aya, or from cognate with shepherd. And then because Quran in this verse has two cognates of Ra'aya used, now he has to say, okay, look, Rohban has come, Ra'aya. So yeah, what he argues is that we have Rohban here, and then we have Ma Ra'uha Haka Ra'ayata. And then because Ra'uha and Ra'ayata are from Ra'aya is the same root for shepherd, and shepherd is the name used for the bishops. So maybe Rohbaniya is the bishops. I mean, this is very general world, and exactly because Quran didn't use it. And then the question is this: if Rohbaniya was used in the time of Quran for bishops, so what the monks and monastery, the process was called. And then, and unfortunately, I think the weakness is not going to any Arabic literature, not going to any Arabic pre-Islamic poetry, and not going to any other sources, because I think a kind of revisionism is here. I go to Quran and the Diskilia. I don't have time to go that, but you can see this is a Christian poet in 268 AD, 365 before Hijrah. You see it in some poetry of Arabic ascribed to Christian, which maybe there were a Nabataean or I mean, living in upper part, but at least the word Ruhban exists and is used. It's not as common I wanted, but you see this is Mansub al-Amr ibn Abd al-Jinn al-Khazai. I'm very long. I'm sorry. And then the other one you see this is about 30 after Hijrah. Look, kalamat al-Ruhban daira fi qalal. So is Ruhban in the days. Again, you have it. So you have in Arabic literature all of these. Okay, and then I go very fast in 2 minutes. I can finish this. Look, I think the history of monasticism also shows actually Quran is a very nice summary, and we do not need to connect the verse of Quran with the establishment of the Christianity, Jesus, and going too early. I think it's referring to monasticism, and the way is this. Look, this institute, because this is something common, something very prevalent, something naturally Muslims may have questions about it. There is some reputation about it. Prophet Muhammad illiterate practice. There is a tendency everybody go that we do some form of it, fasting, reading Quran. So all of these are there. So it's naturally be asked and criticized. The strength of the whole Dr. Zolati's theory is this financial part, because this Surah al-Hadith clearly have financial connotations that should be added to. I mean, any other theory should add this. This context shows that the deviation is more financial. Okay, now so what we say? Look, this monasticism started in the 3rd century, established about 4th century, and it was individualistic, mostly by individualist monks going in, wandering in the deserts of Egypt and Sinai. It was a Roman soldier, which somewhere in the 4th century produced a first communal monastery in 323, and then by the very famous influential bishop Athanasius, which in the rivalry between Athanasius and Arius, he was banished to Germany, spread to Europe, and spread all around. So you have the monastics are growing before Islam. Now, there are examples these monastic centers first were existing all around in the deserts of Arabia, in Palestine, in Egypt, in Syria, in Iraq, is about 4th and 5th century. They are very, very common presence. There are examples. Arabs before Islam have gone them. There are Arab Christians speaking in Hira, other places. So the institution is very, very well known. The biography of Prophet Muhammad is mentioning them. I maybe missed one of my slides. That's fine. And then even nowadays we have discovery of old monasteries in Arabia near Tabuk. So the fact monasteries exist, and the fact that they're becoming so much spread, maybe not in Hijaz, but in Najran, near Tabuk, near in Iraq, in Syria, Palestine, and it's a very well-known institution. Everybody goes trade, and then also these monks come for conversion of Arabs, and many tribes converted. There are stories like that. So clearly is awareness, clearly is a presence. And now the only question is that what is this diversion is? What is what is they did which they transgress the boundary? What they did, if initially they intend only seeking the pleasure of God, or intended to be, as it says here, the origin, aspiration, monasticism, and institution based on Christian ideal perfection have traditionally traced to the first apostolic community in Jerusalem. The early church, they want to be perfect Christian. So why, where we need wrong? And it is no. Look, Jack Tanis has a very wonderful book coming out recently. I think the answer explicitly is there. The Making of Middle East. It says the monasteries were famous at the 5th century at that time for two things: wine and the festival of saints. Okay, and then you can start. Apart from pulchritude of some of their inhabitants, the beauty of the ladies, or and the pleasantness and respite of their gardens and varied monasteries had at least two things that were of interest to Muslim and non-Muslim alike. This is Muslim, but you can see I wrote before Islam. Even before coming to Islam, Arabs would go to Christians in order to get hold wine. For example, a famous Arab poet became Christian because he died 629, a time of prophet, because he used to go to these monasteries in Iraq buying wine, and then they talk about Christianity, he converted. Wine was made in monasteries and could be even bought there. So this is one part of it. Okay, maybe some negative reputation from Islamic perspective, but the real deal is this one. Christian feast days provided opportunities for wine also for mixing men and women. Well before the birth of Prophet Muhammad, this is none of my sentences, all Jack Dennis. The festivals of saints had become associated with revelry and purity, which is happening in monasteries, which should be the house of seclusion, worshiping God, going away by what stuff. Look, all these are, because we don't have time, these are all 5th century total of Sirius, again talking about what's wrong happening in monasteries. Rabula of Edessa admonition concerning monks, again what's happening in the monasteries. And I'm not reading it, we don't have time. Teodota of Amid, again explaining, all is in Jack Dennis' book. But the one I do, and I finish it with, is Michael the Great. Look what the situation is, very clear. And all these sentences of Michael the Great. At the time of Arab conquest, a number of people were taken captive while celebrating the festival of Saint Simon at the site of this famous pillar in one of these ceremonies. Michael the Great blamed the capture on their improper behavior that went on at such celebrations, these feast celebrations. After these things, he wrote, when Arabs heard of the festival that took place at the monastery of Mar Simon of the Stylite, is very famous, which is in the territory of Antioch, they come and took captive a great mass of people, men, women, boys, and girls without number. And the Christians began to despair. Some people were saying, why God did permit this to happen? By the discerning person, but the discerning person would understand righteousness permitted this to take place, for instead of fasting and keeping watch and singing psalms, the Christian engaged in debauchery, drunkenness, revelry, and other kinds of drunkenness and dissipation at the festivals of the saints and provoke God. Therefore, it is with justice that he reproves and chastises us for the purpose of correction. Okay, so you can see that monasteries are now get famous for something else. So I think it's very natural. Quran says you had some another idea. It's different from what's happening, maybe the lawsuits, but actually, and so you really go away completely against what your good intention was. And then what are the last thing? Quran is very indirect and polite when it's talking sexual or individual personal hygiene mistakes. For example, wife of Zuleika, wife of Pharaoh, says "Haytulaka," or when he wants to say you can have intimacy or with your wives, la mastum nisa, if you touch your woman. I mean, it's not literally touch. Or even you go to wants to go defecating. I'm sorry, it doesn't use the word. It says if you go to the bathroom. So I think in the indirectness of this, which all people understand, is kind of a very sharp indirect. Everybody knows they're all wink or smile. We know what's happening there. Those monasteries are what good for. Is more prone to the sexual moral deviation, but is not against to be financial thing too. But Quran in financial is more explicit. All the times we're criticizing financial explicit, but moral indecency is very indirect. But people should get it. Financial is too, because these monasteries were selling, trading, having money, collecting money, have lots of land, and so on. So what I'm saying, this verse is very clear, is I think is going against monastery and monasticism and the whole philosophy. Initially was good. It's not related necessarily to Paul and Jesus and early part of Christians, but they built it, they have good intention, but it really is not what it should be functioning. And if some of those people in monastery are really good, God reward them. Even actually that was Luther angry. Luther said some of his fellow men are reciting, deceiving people, there are corrupt indulgences. So I'm sorry, I took a lot of time. I'm very sorry. I will stop here, and I'm ready for any all questions you have. Thank you very much.